Hi everyone, and welcome to the first episode of a brand new mini-series, Remember the Magic of the Holidays. In this show, we're taking a deep dive into the winter-themed entertainment offerings found in Disney parks all around the world. In today's premiere episode, we're going to kick off the spirit of the season by talking about the first modern Christmas offering still around to this day, Disneyland's A Christmas Fantasy Parade. Let's begin. The history of this parade goes all the way back to when Disneyland opened back in 1955. Being very attuned with his Christian faith, Walt wanted to celebrate Christmas time in his new family entertainment park. Actually, Disneyland's first ever consistently performed parade was one based around Christmas. Though barely more than a fun seasonal cavalcade, it was definitely a fun experience, and the show only grew from there. Many more Christmas parade-type experiences came and went over the following years, such as the Christmas Toy Parade and Fantasyland Parade. While it's certainly cool that the tradition of Christmas goes all the way back to when the parks opened, these experiences were almost unrecognizable from parades today. Really, the whole idea of the modern Disney parade began in 1972 with the Main Street Electrical Parade. Anyway, fast forward long after Walt's death to December of 1987, when the brand new Very Merry Christmas Parade premiered. This new show was much more suited for the times, with a full lineup of well-decorated floats, a synced soundtrack in the same vein as the Main Street Electrical Parade, and so much more. Replacing the former Fantasyland Parade, which had been running on and off since the 60s, this new parade was a slightly retooled version of the former, but it did have some legitimate additions. Anyway, this parade ran for quite a few years before fans began wanting something even more dazzling. But before we get to that, there are a few quick things I need to talk about. Between the mid-80s and early 90s, Disneyland started doing much shorter parades, and by that I don't mean a parade that has fewer units, I mean a parade that had a much shorter run. As opposed to more modern parades that tend to last upwards of 20 years sometimes, Disneyland at the time was really doing a new parade every 1 to 2 years. Some examples of these were the Hooray for Disney Stars parade, which ran between 1989 and 1990, Celebration USA in 1992, and Party Gras in 1990. The main thing is, unlike Walt Disney World, where they will copy-paste a parade verbatim, switch up the soundtrack and float order and call it new, Disneyland was mostly making entirely new floats for every parade, albeit with a few recycled ones. This practice resulted in an ever-increasing number of parade floats taking up storage all over the place with no apparent future, and Disney decided to finally do something about that in the mid-1990s. Disneyland's Very Merry Christmas Parade held its final seasonal run in 1994, and in the holiday season of 1995, the brand new A Christmas Fantasy Parade opened. While this parade was mainly a slightly revamped version of the Very Merry Christmas Parade, which in itself was a slightly revamped version of Fantasyland Parade, it did have a bunch of recycled units from many of the one-year-only parades, mainly 1992's The World According to Goofy. In any case, the parade was quite a success, with a catchy new soundtrack, several new units, and just an overall refreshed look. And the parade still performs seasonally to this day. Since 1995, much has changed. Units have been swapped out, characters replaced with more relevant IP, stuff like this happening, you get the idea. Anyway, while it's certainly improved a lot since 1995, at heart it's still the same awesome parade, and that brings us all the way up to today. Obviously, with Disneyland's extended closure, the show isn't being performed right now, but there is always hope that it will return in 2021. With all that said, let's move on to the design segment. This parade is pretty much my favorite out of any in the Disney canon, so without wasting any time, let's dive into each respective unit. As the parade starts, we hear its incredible soundtrack start emanating around the park, alongside with the inevitable voice of Bill Rogers introducing us to the spectacle about to unfold. The first piece of the parade to appear is the Music Box opening float. Recycled from the World According to Goofy parade, this float depicts a stack of books upon which a music box is seen. Perched upon the music box is a ballerina, and at her side a plush bear. While now a more nondescript version of the Teddy, in 2011 and 2012, Disney experimented putting Duffy the Disney Bear in its place. If you've never heard of Duffy before, allow me to elaborate. Duffy is the first in a long line of Tokyo Disney Sea-specific characters started in 2004. Some of Duffy's friends include Shelly May, Stella Lou, Cookie Ann, Olumel, and my personal favorite, Gelatoni. Anyway, while the Japanese guests love these characters, they never really caught on in the States. Well, at least not in 2011. Now they seem to be attempting to give these characters a second chance. Anyway, in 2013, the bear reverted back to its original version, though for some reason Duffy was placed in the following mailroom unit for a short time before disappearing for good in 2015. Overall, the opening float also got a few alterations, with the entire float getting a touch-up and the Disneyland logo being removed. This float is followed by the Toy Soldiers from Babes in Toyland, though in some years they came before the first float. These, I think, hold the record of being the costumes at the resort that have gone the longest without any changes, as they are nearly identical to when they first appeared in the 1950s. One really cool detail about these costumes is that the trumpets they carry actually provide live audio, which I personally think is a really charming detail, if not a bit deafening when viewed too close. Next comes Santa's mailroom unit, originally featuring Mrs. Claus alongside some of the elves. Nowadays, the Fab Five appear here, being moved from various other parts of the parade. Mrs. Claus was strangely absent for several years after the gang moved here, but she was reinstated in 2019, now forced to walk along the parade route along with the elves. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Anyway, this unit consists of a mailroom float, which is actually a reused Snow White float from the Very Merry Christmas parade. Possibly as a tribute, the dwarves were added alongside the elves and Mrs. Claus for a while before being removed in the early 2000s. This unit is super cute, and it reuses the float really well, altering several pieces of the underlying structure. Though originally followed by the Toy Factory unit, nowadays Santa's mailroom is followed by the Winter Wonderland unit. It begins with a book, recycled from the world according to Goofy, and dancers on roller skates resembling snowflakes that glide alongside the beautiful winter-themed Christmas tree float. This is followed by several snowmen dressed in a multitude of adorable, unique costumes. They are followed by the ice skating float, a unit with a literal sheet of ice on it allowing for characters to skate across it, obviously with the necessary safety equipment. This float was reused from the Very Merry Christmas parade. While originally featuring Chip and Dale, they were removed and replaced with Mickey and Minnie early on. However, in 2014, the float was altered severely, now featuring Anna, Olaf, and Elsa from Frozen. Unfortunately, the ice skating platform was removed during this time as well. Also, for a very long time, this unit was accompanied by Winnie the Pooh, Tigger, and Eeyore all on sleighs, but much to my dismay, they were removed in 2019. This saddens me greatly, because seeing them was one of my earliest Disney memories, but I'll talk about that more in the conclusion. In the early days of the parade, Aladdin, Jasmine, and the Genie appeared too in a Whirly unit sleigh. However, they disappeared after the 2005 season. Up next is the Recipe for Gingerbread Treats unit. This opens with yet another book recycled from World According to Goofy and some dancers dressed as bakers alongside Clarabelle Cow. Some adorable gingerbread men are also featured. They are followed by the Gingerbread House float, which dates all the way back to Fantasy on Parade, being one of very few units in the parade to survive both revitalizations, though it has seen a good few changes, mainly in the characters featured on the float. Originally it featured Daisy and Clarabelle, but they were replaced strangely with a Mad Tea Party scene in 1998 featuring Alice and the Mad Hatter. Possibly because of how bizarre this choice was, they were removed in 2000 in favor of Max and Goofy. However, even Max was removed in favor of Pluto in 2013. I can only imagine what happened to him. I mean, sure, this unit is cool, but I can only imagine how much time it has left seeing how long it's been around. Anyway, next comes the Candlelight Christmas unit. Once again opening with a book from World According to Goofy, this unit begins with several dancers dressed in elegant costumes, followed by a cavalcade of Disney princesses, some of whom appear on the Candlelight Ball float, which was recycled from the Very Merry Christmas parade where it carried characters from Fantasia for some reason. For a while, this was all followed by a glistening Christmas tree float, but it was removed in 2002, though it is possible it was repurposed into a different tree float seen later. Nowadays, the next unit is the Toy Factory unit, though originally it was the second unit of the parade. Once again, beginning with a book from the World According to Goofy, originally 2 toy block floats carried Ariel and Roger Rabbit. However, they were removed in 2006. Nowadays, the book is followed by Jessie in a toy truck and Woody and Buzz on updated toy block floats. The main part of the unit is the Toy Factory float. This was originally a reused float dating all the way back to Fantasy on Parade, though possibly to provide a few changes, a Ferris wheel was tacked onto the back of it in 1996. The unit featured Pinocchio and Jiminy Cricket, with Geppetto being added in later years. Due to the float's age, it was retired in 2008 and replaced with this stunning new version of the float. This is such a fun new adaptation of the unit. We see the whole process of how a toy is made, and it's just such a delightfully kinetic float. Unfortunately, in 2015, Geppetto, Pinocchio, and Jiminy got axed in favor of the Green Army Men from Toy Story, which is a bit disappointing. The dancers in this unit have also changed a lot throughout the years. Originally, it was dolls and various Disney characters. Then it was just the toy dolls, and now it's more of Santa's elves. Anyway, this all leads into the last unit. Santa's Finale unit is one of only 2 in the parade not to be opened by a book-themed float. Instead, carolers greet us and sing many merry tunes. In the early days of the parade, they were followed by a Christmas Village float featuring Scrooge McDuck and Donald, but it was unfortunately removed in 2000. This is really interesting since originally it was one of the only floats constructed specifically for Christmas fantasy. A beautifully decorated tree was added in 2003, possibly reusing the Candlelight Christmas one that was retired the previous year. Either way, it's a beautiful addition to the unit and looks even more stunning at dusk. Anyway, these floats are followed by Santa's reindeer and the big man himself. While originally Santa appeared on a reused float from Very Merry Christmas Parade, which really gave off a Mary Poppins vibe to me, it was replaced with this equally stunning float in 2005. Unfortunately, this float has gotten some bad press in recent years due to a bizarre malfunction that occurred in 2018, where Santa was flung forward in his sleigh, dangling from his harness with the presents from his sack smacking him in the face. This float did return later in the season, but come on, this was just too hilarious to be forgotten. Which is a shame because the float is beautiful. The flight effect is hidden quite well, it's beautifully decorated, and it's just a perfect finale to this incredible parade. So that is Disneyland's A Christmas Fantasy Parade. Why do I like the parade so much that consists of 90% reused floats? Well, allow me to answer that in the conclusion. Okay, I know I really dissed Boo to You pretty hard about having reused floats, but like I said there, so many of those were just copied verbatim. Here, old floats got rethemed so well that I just don't really mind. Also, it helps that they were rethemed from former Christmas-themed parades as opposed to Boo to You, which was just a huge mess of reused floats from all over the place. Basically, what I'm trying to say is they did a really good job. A Christmas Fantasy Parade is easily my favorite Disneyland parade of all time, and it's definitely in my top 5, period. Sure, Parade of Dreams is more spectacular, and yes, Soundsational has a more cohesive theme, but I mean, come on, this parade is so spectacularly charming. Every piece of it is stunning, from the opening unit to the grand finale. Also, I will always look to this parade with a sense of nostalgia. While Soundsational was technically the first parade I ever saw back in 2011, this is the first parade I was truly inspired by. As a dumb 8-year-old, I didn't really get the whole pop-up book motif Soundsational was attempting. I just thought it looked incredibly cheap. When I saw Christmas Fantasy for the first time in 2012, I was just blown away by it. The whole idea of the storybooks coming alive is so well done, even my dumb 8-year-old brain was able to pick up on it easily. That said, I also just had a really fun time watching it. There is so much good in this parade that any hint of mediocrity is so infinitesimally small that it can be swept away by the charm alone. Like I said in the Frightfully Fun Parade video, Disneyland is really good at taking old parade floats and making them into new concepts that fit the idea of the parade. I really don't know why Walt Disney World just doesn't. I mean, in a few weeks I'm going to talk about Mickey's Once Upon a Christmas Time parade, and that definitely has a ton of retheming issues, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The point is, this parade is fantastic, and it's easily my favorite. This is an amazing parade, and I hope it sticks around for a long, long time to come. Thank you for joining me at the most merriest time of the year in this episode of Remember the Magic of the Holidays. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking the video and subscribing to my YouTube channel. There are a lot of videos coming out real soon you won't want to miss, so be sure to click the bell icon so you get notified when we upload a new video. Have a great, big, beautiful day, and remember, tomorrow is just a dream away.
Christmas.